So I've already talked about the massive hypocrisy on the part of Ben Shapiro, because he claims that the left constantly calls people racist. In some cases, which they do. But here, I'm going to be showing you guys another example of how he basically rapid fires the anti-Semite accusation. So now, he had written this article in 2009 talking about how Barack Obama was an anti-Semite, and this rhetoric and comments coming from him continued throughout Obama's presidency. So I have some quotes from here to read to you guys. It says, so basically the article was about how the Obama administration was trying to tie in preventing Iran's nuclear program with peace between the Palestinians and Israelis. So here's a quote that from his article. It says, "This is anti-Semitism at its finest. Not even the heyday of the Carter administration did such anti-Semitism find expression in American foreign policy." So automatically, this quote just deems him ridiculous, because the Carter administration was trying to broker peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians. He was the reason why Israel and Egypt had a peace treaty. That's why they got peace, and his goal was to get peace between everybody. You know that he is not an anti-Semite. He's not a racist by any means whatsoever of any kind, and that's probably one of the dumbest accusations to put on Jimmy Carter, period. But here's what he says. He also says, Obama's defenders no doubt scoff at such accusations. Obama, the man of tolerance, an anti-Semite? Yes, an anti-Semite. And here's another one. He says, Obama's attitude towards Israel demonstrate his belief that the Jews should be held to a higher standard than any other nation, the standard of unrelenting surrender. Take, by contrast, Obama's attitude toward the Pakistani government. The Pakistani government recently conceded the Swat Valley to the Taliban. The Obama administration opposed Pakistan's concession. So first of all, him saying that Obama's attitude towards Israel demonstrate his belief that Jews should be held to a higher standard than any other nation, I don't understand how that is a bad thing. You want to be held to a higher standard. The USA should have a better standard than its opponents. It should have a better standard than, radical Islamists and terrorists. Yes, any nation that it has an opponent that is such a, loathsome piece of garbage like radical Islamists should have higher standards. That's such a dumb thing. And a democracy has to be criticized much more than any other system, because it's a democracy, and that's part of democracy. And now saying standard of unrelenting surrender, I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. Unrelenting just makes it sound really stupid. They've been making settlements for days now. They've been encroaching on land. They have military occupation of the West Bank, etc., etc. And then he basically compares this situation of attempting to broker peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians with basically the Pakistani government had surrendered some ground basically to the Taliban, which is literally the enemy of the United States government. So he compared the United States government at war with the Taliban and Pakistan giving them a concession with attempting to broker peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians. So that kind of tells you a lot about it. And here's probably one of the craziest things that he said. He says, quote, during the election campaign, I wrote that Obama was, quote, the most dangerous candidate for the state of Israel since its creation in 1948. I wrote, any American Jew who votes for Obama ought to be ashamed of him or herself. My words were not strong enough. Any Jew who continues to support Obama's foreign policy should turn in his badge as a Jew. That means you, Rahm Emanuel, and all Americans who support Israel must stand up against a president who values the genocidal murderers in Muslim lands over our democratic allies in the Jewish state. So again, Obama gives him $3 billion a year, doesn't do jack shit to really go against Israel. The most he did was literally had his admin, his UN secretary, abstain from a vote that all it did was basically say, hey, Israel, we are condemning your settlements. That's all it was. And all they did was abstain. They didn't even vote a yes on it. And saying this is so embarrassing. Really, the most dangerous candidate for the state of Israel since its creation in 1948, my asshole. How could you even write something like that? And again, we come into this kind of dichotomy where essentially you criticize the state of Israel and you're all of a sudden an anti-Semite. And I think it was something like over 70% of Jews voted for Obama in the first term, and that was something like over 60% in the second. So I give them a lot of credit for that. I mean, that's, you know, their most secular religion too. Or most secular people, I mean to say. And he says that all Jews who continue to support Obama's foreign policy should turn in their badge as a Jew. Just probably the most embarrassing thing possible. And the idea that somehow criticizing Israel's, foreign policy or Israel as a state makes you an anti-Semite is the most embarrassing thing possible on two fronts. One of the fronts being that, you can criticize the state without being an anti-Semite, because then that essentially makes it so that you can't ever criticize Israel in any way, shape, or form, no matter what they do. They're making illegal settlements, having military occupations of the West Bank, and making checkpoints and harassing Palestinians. Oh, you can't say anything because, hey, there are democratic allies, and if you do so, it means you're an anti-Semite. But on front number two is the fact that Obama didn't do jack shit to really check Israel at all or try to get any peace or anything like that. So he didn't really do shit, and he's saying that he is the most dangerous person for Israel ever since its creation in 1948. Ben Shapiro, go fuck yourself.